Welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about Sword Burst 3, a game that is pretty clearly heavily inspired by Sword Art Online, has a fair chunk of people playing it, and some people asked me to play it, so I took a look. And with this game, I'm pretty torn, and the best that I can liken this to is how I felt about Venture Tale, which if anyone saw my video on that game, yeah, not a phenomenal sign. The thing is that it feels like there are so many things that Sword Burst 3 does right, and then a massive, colossal list that it does wrong, that then just drowns out all the things that it did right, and that's a real shame. I'll be fully upfront that when I jumped into this game initially, I had the lowest of the low expectations. And unfortunately, by the end of the game, it met those low expectations. But at the beginning and towards the middle, it was surpassing them. Which again, that really sucks. So what is Sword Burst 3? Well, to put it simply, it's a bandit beater. If you've gone in and killed NPCs in order to level up to go kill more NPCs, yeah, if you've played a game like that before, congratulations. You've probably also played this one. Now granted, this formula doesn't mean that your game is doomed from the start, despite what a lot of people will almost certainly tell you. I think that this formula can be fun, it's just that it's almost never executed well. And unfortunately, as I said, this is going to be another example of one of those games. The very first thing that I picked up on, because of course I did, it's the same on all of these games, is just how horrendous the hit detection is. Of course the hitboxes don't actually match the red outlines of where the attacks are going to be, because we're playing Roblox. Like, come on, does this look like it hit me? No it didn't. I've said it 100 times and I'll say it 100 more. I really think that these games ought to make the actual attacks smaller than what the hitboxes portray them as, and if it does that, then it'll add a small margin of error so that way when you dodge an attack, it doesn't hit you. Although I think there's an even better solution to this problem, which is to just give the dash invincibility frames. I don't know how all these games aren't learning from Dark Souls, who has been doing this for years and years, but if you give the roll or dash iframes, it's tied to a stamina bar anyway, so it's not like you can roll forever, but it also makes it so if you dodge into attacks, you can keep up pressure at the risk of taking damage, and if you're dodging away from attacks and the very end of the attack clips you because the game doesn't work, we're playing Roblox, you'll invincibility that part of the attack, and it solves just so many problems. And the other big factor that I noticed while playing this, and maybe this changes throughout the upper floors that I didn't get to, but I kind of doubt it, is that despite there being enemy variety, the actual variety in the enemies is basically non-existent. Enemies have 3 attacks, arguably only 2 attacks. They have a circle attack in front of them, a circle attack around them, and a square or rectangle attack that goes forwards. Every single enemy has some variation of these 3 attacks. And sure, some of those attacks do more damage, some of them come out faster or have larger hitboxes, but at the end of the day, they are all the same. So regardless of what enemy you're fighting, and regardless of what they look like, or what the animation for the attack looks like, all of the attacks are basically the same. There's no projectiles, there's no attacks that are in triangles, there's no attacks that are in hexagons, who knows? You know, you could pick anything, but unfortunately it just doesn't exist here. Practically every enemy in the game, it feels like, had 2 circle attacks and a rectangle attack. Now, moving past that, there was one thing that I noticed, which is that there was basically no teamwork or working together with other players whatsoever, seemingly at all in the game. It's as if the game was made as a single-player game, and then they were like, well, it's Roblox, so we'll make it multiplayer. It didn't seem like there was a direct party or clan system. I might have missed it. There's a very good chance of that. But even if there was one, it wouldn't matter because it didn't seem like there were any supportive skills or any of those things in order to encourage people to work together. You're just all a one-man army, which isn't innately bad all the time, but it does feel like an otherwise completely unused section of the game that could exist, but just doesn't. And on that same front, when we get to talking about sharing and working together with other players, this game unfortunately does fall into the pitfall that so many MMO games fall into, where it doesn't feel like I'm fighting against the enemies sometimes, it feels like I'm fighting against other people. And not directly fighting against other people, but no, I'm fighting against other people in order to kill enemies so that way I can progress. And that is the worst feeling in the world. There were two standout examples that I can give you that just totally butchered the experience for me. The first was at this wolf boss. There was a level 45 player here, presumably farming the boss for drops. I don't really know why they needed the drops, considering that the way the equipment system works in the game, something that I'll be talking about in a second, doesn't really encourage you to go back and fight enemies and bosses and stuff like that to try to get items from those bosses, because they just get phased out by better equipment very quickly. And there's not really anything unique about them, but regardless, this level 45 guy was here killing the boss, and because of the way that the percentage damage that you need to do in order to get credit for the boss works, this guy basically phased every single other player on the entire server from being able to fight this boss. If you go here and try to fight the boss, you will not hit the percentage in order to get the kill, and that means that every single time that the boss spawns, this guy hoards it and everyone else gets fucked. And there's literally nothing you can do about it other than leave the server and find another one. What the hell? Really? Come on. And it's not like it's this guy's fault. If he wants to sit here and kill the boss super quickly over and over again, that's fine. But it should not, under any circumstances, screw over every single other player in the server. I don't care if this is a hot take. If you deal damage to an enemy or a boss, you should get credit. Because the second that you start doing percentages and stuff like that, then you get into situations like this, where somebody can just kill the boss in 3 hits and you get nothing. And that feels horrible. Sure, does it mean that people can technically carry you to ridiculous lengths, something that I'll be talking about in just a second here? Yes, but at the end of the day, what's worse? Having someone get carried past where they otherwise should be, or having it so that way one guy hogs an entire boss and blocks the entire server from getting rewards from it? I think you know my answer on that one. Now, I touched on weapons and how they get phased out very quickly, and so that's what I want to talk about right now. One thing that I think is incredible about this game is that at the boss spawns, it tells you what items drop there and their percentage for dropping them. People cry to me over and over and over again, wah, Eclipse just used the wiki. Wah, Eclipse, it's impossible for them to tell you all the information in the game. And this game just proves that you're full of shit. How many games out there are there where the boss has a bunch of boss drops and you have no goddamn clue what they are? Absolutely zero. And so the only way to know is either to roll the 1% chance or look it up on the internet. Well, here you go. All these games ever needed to do was put a little overlay right here that tells you exactly what the boss drops. Wow. Incredible. You guys, come on. They did it. Bravo. Honestly, round of applause. Bravo. I really hope this starts to become a trend, because this whole having to look things up on the wiki thing, it's nonsense. It's stupid. You shouldn't have to do that. But, of course, we do have some problems with this. And that mostly stems from the fact that there's not really anything unique about these boss drops as far as I could tell. I mean, just take a look at this really badass greatsword that I got from the forest boss. It looks really cool. It's a really well-made model, and if I didn't know any better, I'd want to use this for a fair amount of time. But I can't do that. And that's because this gets phased out extremely quickly the second that I find another weapon that has better stats than it. And the problem with all the weapons in this game is that they're categorized as the types of weapons they are, rather than the actual weapon itself that you pick up. Now, granted, what I'm about to say, I understand would take a lot of work, but taking a lot of work is not an excuse for having a subpar game, and sometimes it's going to take a lot of work in order to have your game stand out. I'm of the opinion that, at the very least, the unique weapons in the game, or boss-dropped weapons, should all have separate skills tied to them. As it is right now, if you find a greatsword, that greatsword is going to have the exact same skills as any other greatsword that you find in the entire game. Now imagine that I had come to this boss, taken them out, and I got the greatsword to drop. I picked it up, and it had a whole bunch of vines and more plant-like moves that were tied to it. Maybe moves that root people in place. That would be really cool and would make getting the drops super exciting. But as it is right now, the only reason that you would farm this boss is if you were an early on player and you're trying to get a bit of a leg up for the next stuff that you're going to be going up against. This greatsword is effectively turned into a paperweight, and this cool-ass model, complete waste of time. It's not used by anyone anywhere past this point because why would they use it? Just use something better. And that feels like a real shame. Of course, this whole thing poses a problem in that it would basically upend the entire weapons system because leveled weapons have, higher level stats, and so how would you balance it out with making it so it has different skills, but then if it's a higher level, you'd have to think about how do you ascend weapons in a sense, how do you make them better, and it's 100% doable, but it would be a lot of work. On the topic of upgrades though, upgrading my weapons felt completely pointless. I don't know if it's just me, but the difference between a 3-star leveled up weapon and a 0-star level up weapon felt like absolutely nothing. Now I get it, clearly getting a better weapon is going to be better than upgrading your current one, but a lot of the time it felt like I was just wasting time and resources by upgrading my weapon because it barely made any sort of impact on what I was doing. I don't know if this is fixable or if it even needs to be fixed, but it's just something that I noticed while I was playing. Now, we dipped our toes into talking about bosses earlier, and I want to talk about what happens if the boss kills you, because this game has one of the most glaring design flaws in the history of any game ever, and that's the respawns. What the fuck? Seriously, game developers? What the fuck? Do I even need to elaborate? Probably not. In case you haven't played Swordburst 3, if you die in this game, which is a linear game where you go forward, and so the longer along you get, the further it is from the spawn point, you go all the way back. That's right, to the very first place that you spawned. Are you kidding me? Are you gonna tell me that not a single person, while testing this game, thought to themselves, maybe you shouldn't go all the way back to the starting area with the level 2 boars when you die at the level 20 area? What the fuck? I just refuse to, I refuse to believe this. There is no way. I had to have missed something. If I missed something incredibly obvious, please God, I hope I did. Please God, I hope that I missed something incredibly obvious, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm pretty sure when you die, you go all the way back. It's like we're playing an NES game. You die once, back to the start, dipshit. Why doesn't it just reset your progress while it's at it? I don't know, but it sucks. Respawning sucks. I'm at a complete loss as to how anybody thought this was a good idea. But the thing is, we talked about all of these problems, and none of them were really the things that ruined this game for me. No, the real thing that ruined this game, and was the total nail in the coffin, was the level locks. Yep, here we go again. I swear to God, level locks are the bane of the existence on any Roblox game. I feel like all of them have this problem. They just hate letting people have freedom. They are created with the express purpose to waste as much time as possible. And this game, yep, it's wasting a shitload of my time. At first, the level locks didn't seem so bad. And this is, the trend. You keep the level locks pretty tame at first, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. But this game has one of the worst brick walls I've played in a long time. So you get up to this section of the game, right? There's a bunch of meese around. You need to take out the meese, and that's the quest. Kill 5 meese. Got it. Now, let's say I don't want to kill 5 meese over and over and over again. So what's next? Well, it's the dungeon with the floor boss in order to get to the next floor. And what level do you need to get to that? Level 20. Okay, well, I'm not even really close to level 20, and I don't get very much XP for doing the meese quest. But the problem is that there are no other options to level up other than doing this. You have to kill the meese over and over and over again. And because this specific quest is the worst level lock on floor 1, everyone's here. Everyone's doing it. And so now we've got this same problem from earlier that I talked about, where everyone's just fighting each other over the enemy spawns. It's not like fighting the enemies is hard. It's not like they have a chance. I can literally stand here and hold M1 and I will win. Literally, no joke. So there's no challenge here. The challenge here is getting to the enemies before other people do, so that way I can kill them. Why? If we take a few steps back, before this quest, there's a bunch of crystal boars that you need to kill. Okay, well, I didn't want to do that, so I went past them and I found the Mies quest early. And of course, naturally, I can't do it because the game won't let me, but hey, let's go check if I can kill the Mies. Of course I fucking can. I could probably have sat here and M1'd the Mies to death at this level too. But the game physically will not let me continue unless I go backwards and fight the fucking boars. Now granted, the game does have an incredibly good system for repeatable quests where you can consistently repeat them in the field without having to go back to the NPC in order to talk to them again. That's awesome, and I wish every game had this, but that is not enough to offset having to sit here fighting against 4 other people for an enemy spawn so that way I can move on. And then, the dungeon. Aw, you motherfuckers, the dungeon. What were they thinking? I have no clue. So you get into the dungeon and you find a guy that has a quest. He says, fight these armored boar guys. Okay, whatever. Are the armored boar guys hard? No, they're piss easy. Of course they are. So I fight some of the armored boar guys and then I get kind of tired of it, so I just run past all the boar guys and let's go find the final boss. Rookie fucking mistake. I run through the entire dungeon, including finding new enemies that I haven't found a quest in order to kill, and get all the way up to the boss door. And take a wild goddamn guess what's at the boss door. Another fucking level lock. And guess what? Now there's 2 level locks. So, what would I need to do in order to get past this level lock? I'd have to trek back through the entire fucking dungeon so that way I could fight the correct enemies over and over again, so that way I could level up to come all the way back here to then fight some more enemies over and over again so I could go through the door and fight the goddamn boss. No, fuck you, I'm done.